Hi, and welcome to Are You Ready for Life? My name is Jude Avelino. I'm an attorney who practices law in New York and New Jersey. I have a master's in law in taxation from Georgetown, and I have over 20 years of experience. And in this 20 plus years, I've guided my clients through good times, bad times, and the unexpected times. And the common thread in successfully navigating these situations is to have a plan. Now, we all watch TV, and there's many news shows with people talking about the stock market and advising you on how to make money. But there's not enough people talking about how to help you protect your money and how to protect your most valuable asset, your family. Throughout this series, I'm going to introduce you to my trusted friends and colleagues to have an open and frank discussion to educate you on pertinent topics to help you prepare for life. Now, today's topic is a difficult one. The aging of our parents and how it affects the sandwich generation. That's caring for your children, your parents, as well as trying to take care of yourself. This discussion will educate you on when it's time to have a frank conversation with your parents regarding their assets and what happens in the event of disability and death. We will also explore how to discuss this uncomfortable topic with parents and other relatives, and then finally come up with a plan. Today, I'd like you to welcome my good friend and guest, Carla Panzita. Carla is the Director of Business Development in New Jersey for Glenmead Investment Management. Glenmead is an independent, privately owned wealth advisor with a national presence for the past 65 years. Carla's focus is on developing affluent clients in New Jersey who own family businesses, are successful corporate executives, or who inherit wealth, as well as endowments and foundations who require a fiduciary to manage investable assets. Carla is a long-standing member of the Summit Junior League and has served on the board of the Summit New Jersey YMCA. On a personal level, Carla is the primary caretaker of her parents. Only when faced with this personal transition herself did she recognize the importance of an independent and valued advisor. Now, we share this caretaker role in common, as I was a primary caretaker of my grandmother. Carla, thank you today for being with us. I know we share a lot of firsthand experiences on this topic, so let's begin with a question that we were both forced to ask. When is it time to have that conversation with your parents about their assets?
Well, Jude, first and foremost, I'm delighted to be here today. I think that working with advisors like you and really talking about these types of topics openly gives people like us ideas on how to resolve issues with our parents and grandparents when we become, at some point, the caretaker. So, the question you ask is a very good one, and it's one that my siblings and I really struggled with. But for me, there were several triggers with my mother and father that prompted me to start to ask many more detailed questions and really make a move to kind of help them in some authoritative way. So the triggers, I thought, were things like this. My mother, I noticed, was less engaged in our phone calls. She tended to hand the phone off to my father quickly. She mentioned over and over again how messy her house had become. She said, "Wow, I spent hours cleaning up and it just gets messier and messier." Another thing I noticed was that my dad was forgetting to pay bills. He was calling his broker every day asking if she had made certain investments. So I could tell through patterns that were repetitive where my parents were really losing their short-term memory and, moreover, their ability to not process what I call executive functioning, organizing their day, scheduling appointments, and being able to really take action on some of the basic household chores.
And you categorize these as triggers of change.
Yes, I think that's a good name for them, only because when you're very close to parents and grandparents and you see them fairly frequently, I think you don't notice change on a daily basis. But if you really track it and you really look at some basic things like household chores, financial responsibilities, how they communicate with children and grandchildren, I think you see change over time. And that's really what promoted me to sort of step in and try to become the more official caretaker.
Right, and there's no magic number on age, is there?
I think not. My dad is a very healthy 97. My mom passed recently, but was 88 years old. They had a good long life together. And yet one of my dad's best friends is in his late 60s and is far beyond my dad in terms of his, mental incapacity. So again, I don't think this is an age trigger. I think it's behavioral.
And what I would just add to that is, don't wait. When you recognize these triggers of change, don't wait until it's too late.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think part of the common sense there for people in our genre is, if you wait, at some point your parents won't have any authority or responsibility around the planning. But if you do it right before that transition, they feel like they're engaged and they're actually planning for their future.
Great. So now you've recognized these triggers of change. What do you do next?
That was a really tough question for me in particular. Both my sisters at the time had some emotional issues and were not financially independent. So I knew I had to really step up and take that leadership position. And it was a struggle. My dad was a former banker, very together, really the patriarch of the family, and did not want to give up the authority. So over some time, I realized that we had a mutual friend in common. It was a fellow that I had gone to college with who became a very prominent trust and estate attorney. My dad knew his parents and his grandparents, and when I mentioned that perhaps we have a discussion with Dave to sort of look at my dad's will and statements and important documents, my father agreed because he knew Dave's family. And in an interesting way, my dad said, well, maybe we can help him out and give him a little bit of business, which I thought was kind of funny, but it actually helped set the stage. And the second thing we did after having that initial meeting with Dave was we allowed Dave to run the conversation and suggest that my dad and mom surround themselves with a team they could trust. It included me as sort of the fiduciary for the family. It included Dave, who was a trust and estate attorney. He also got involved someone from an insurance organization as well as a really good CPA. And together, the 4 or 5 of us have been working really collaboratively, and the planning got done.
That's great. What I found in my experience is I always want to include the children, but I don't want them running the show.
That's right.
I think the parents want that sense of control. So when you pick the advisor, I think it's important to discuss that the parents have to really drive the train, so to speak.
That's right. That's right. I think my father is very much the captain of his ship, and my mom is his first mate. And for the last 5 or 6 years that I've been involved, it worked really well because they both felt that they still had the privilege and authority to make those final decisions.
Right. Whose advisor do you use? Does a child pick their advisor, or does the child use the parent's current advisor if there is one? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's worth a conversation, and I think this is the one time you should be extremely open with your parents and say, how do you feel about the following people? Do they resonate with you? Do you feel comfortable with them? Would you like to meet with them? In our case, we were very lucky because Dave was a very good personal friend of mine. He happened to be a very good trust and estate attorney, and my parents knew his family. So my optimal answer would be find someone that you can both work with. Because while the parents are making the decision for those documents and really what their set of directives are in life, it's the child who's going to act at some point as the fiduciary and have to make the ongoing decisions. So I think it's collaborative, and it should be someone both can work with.
Great. And on the legal side, I can't help talking about legal documents. You know this already. We want to make sure that mom and dad have a power of attorney to enable the child or someone of their choosing to act on their behalf for legal and financial matters. Want to make sure they have a living will, which states their end-of-life wishes. I don't want for any child to have to make that decision on their own. I think the parent should state what their wishes are, and all the child has to then do is carry out those wishes. I think mom and dad should have a will, which names a personal representative of the estate and states who gets what. Who wants arguments after mom and dad pass away? And I just want to add on top of that, these are not actual documents that an attorney has to draft, but please make sure you review your beneficiary forms, right?
Good point.
So for those of you out there, certain assets pass by beneficiary forms and not wills, and those are assets like retirement plans and life insurance. I can't tell you how many times people come to my office and don't pay any attention to that and inadvertently leave out a child or have no one listed on their beneficiary form. It could have negative tax consequences, and you really shouldn't overlook that. Make sure the assets are titled properly. Sometimes mom will put a daughter on a bank account. Mom passes away, that account belongs to the daughter. How does that daughter get a portion of those assets to the other siblings without a negative tax consequence, if she wants to give them up at all? So, trusted advisor, come up with a plan. So now that we've recognized the triggers of change and you selected trusted advisors and came up with a plan, what else is there to do?
Well, for me, this was probably the icing on the cake and the best part. Now that I feel that the planning has been done, that my father trusts me, he trusts his advisors, the best part about our weekly visits, Jude, is that we just have fun.
That's great. I got to enjoy the last few months of my grandmother's life as well, without the added stress of having to figure out who was going to pay all the bills, because she better have had a good plan, because their grandson is an attorney. In my experience, the work, the time, and the energy it takes to have that sometimes awkward conversation with your parents, to then come up with the trusted advisor or advisors and come up with a plan, all of that hard work far outweighs the work you have to put in if mom or dad don't have a plan.
Agreed. And it was something that my parents greatly appreciated. And as my mom was really failing in health, she said, promise me that you'll continue to take care of your dad, which was, very emotional for me. And she said, and remember, go see our attorney, Dave, if you have any questions. So I knew that my mom actually got the point of that. So I agree with you.
Well, when the parents buy into the trusted advisor, you've done a good job.
I think so.
Carla, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. You've given us a lot of frank, practical advice that I hope our viewers can find useful. Remember, collaborate with your parents. Involve them in the process. They should feel like they're driving this train. It shouldn't feel to them like you're trying to take control of their lives. And most importantly, have a plan. Unfortunately, it's not a question of if something is going to happen, it's when. And you'll be in a much better position if you have a plan. So again, Carla, thank you for being on the show. My hope is that after watching the show, you can look yourself in the mirror and confidently answer this question: are you ready for life?